The New York State Legislature is debating a bill today that, if approved, could end the prosecution of 16 and 17-year-olds as adults, no matter what the crime. The reform measure, called Raise the Age, would keep New York from holding the dubious distinction of being the only state in the country that hasn't raised the age to 18 for prosecuting and incarcerating adults. Currently, North Carolina, the other holdout, is about to pass a bipartisan measure to reform its juvenile justice system. Legal experts and juvenile justice advocates have long cited the unjust and damaging effects a 16 and 17-year-old faces when entering the adult criminal justice system that can remain with them throughout their adult life. Studies have found that 80% of them will go on to commit a more serious crime. They are at the highest risk of sexual assault in an adult prison. They are 36 times more likely to commit suicide, and they will have no access to rehabilitation services appropriate to their age group. Well, I guess that's all we have for on the teleprompter went awry there. Listen, my concern here is that 16 and 17-year-olds are in a system in New York, and they are in situations like Kalief Browder was in Rikers, where they go in on something like stealing a backpack and end up in jail for 3 years, and their life is changed forever. Obviously, this can't continue.
Well, that's the argument, if you will. Listen, I'm a former prosecutor from the state of New York, Manhattan. I know Rikers Island very well. They're shutting it down. The statistics that you just used, I lived through those statistics for 4 or 5 years, and those are people who you have not heard about. And so I think the pressure is on New York to make a change because of the detrimental effects it has on young people. But think about all the young people who have been through that system in the history of Rikers, who have been damaged, who make up those statistics. Where are they right now? How much damage that is that they have cannot be undone merely by the changing of this bill. But it's a good bill. It's the right step. I think it's going to pass in New York.
Well, and there's a reason why there's only 2 states left who are trying to figure this out. Joining us by Skype from New York City is Angelo Pinto, the campaign manager for the Raise the Age campaign, and New York State Assembly member Michael Blake by FaceTime from New York City, who is also the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good to be with you.
Listen, some very important work is going on, and I know you all are on the front lines of it. Tell us why it's important that New York make the right decision right now.
Oh, this is about saving lives. You know, 16 and 17-year-olds shouldn't be tried as adults at all. And you know, there's some conversations that are happening of, you know, should it be for violent crimes? You know, what are the parameters? But the reality is, these are kids. You know, Kalief Browder was my constituent. His mother, Vanita, was my constituent. And when you think about how Kalief was tortured and beaten on video, it showed for allegedly stealing a book bag. When you think about how Vanita died from a broken heart because of the heart attack she had by trying to wait for justice, we have to make this change. And the unfortunate reality is that there are many people in this state that are trying to bring forward a watered-down Raise the Age bill that we won't support at all. So we salute our Speaker, Assemblyman Carl Heastie from the Bronx, who has drawn a line in the sand and saying we will not pass a budget here in New York State without a real Raise the Age. We were supposed to pass it on Friday, Monica, and you know, we said, look, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing this at all. Made a decision clearly to move forward and continue to press forward. And so today will be a critical day here in New York State. Do we pass an extender to give us more time to negotiate for a real Raise the Age or not? And there are many Senate Republicans, the governor, and some of the members of the IDC that we need for them to really join us in passing a real Raise the Age bill so that we don't have any more Kalief Browder stories and other stories like him.
Angela, what can we be doing on the ground to help with these efforts?
Well, I think there's some key points of focus that really need attention to make this happen. The governor is one. The governor supports raising the age, but as we say, we want to make sure he supports raising the age right. There's some breakaway Democrats in New York who are called the IDC, who, unless they kind of agree to do raise the age the right way, the Republican Party that controls the Senate can't move things forward. So those 2 points of pressure are important. And I think also supporting Carl Heastie, the Speaker of the Assembly, who is kind of holding the line right now, saying if we don't do this thing the correct way, we're not going to do it at all. So I think we need to keep the pressure up. Advocates need to keep making calls, be visible on social media, and we need to do some actions actually in the capital of Albany and also in some of these folks' district offices.
Well, just to let our audience know, Kalief Browder is the face of Raise the Age in New York. In 2010, as Scott and I were just discussing, at age 16, he was sent to Rikers Island after being accused of stealing a backpack. And Browder always maintained his innocence, but was kept at Rikers for 3 years while awaiting a trial for stealing a backpack. Most of his time spent in solitary confinement. Eventually, the case was dropped and Browder was released, but in 2015, the physical and emotional trauma of being at Rikers for so long took its toll. Browder committed suicide at the age of 22. Lauren, I think that you and I actually were on a show together discussing this very subject. And this is, even though Kalief is the face of this case, this is not an isolated circumstance for juveniles.
Right. Unfortunately, the American criminal justice system has I think, a profit-driven motivation for some of what it does. And obviously, as we know, in New York, where I'm from, when we looked at the stop and frisk stats that the ACLU collected, we see that there was almost everyone that they stopped and frisked was Black and Latino and between a certain age of, teenager to about mid-20s. And Michael Bloomberg thought that was a fantastic idea. But what that shows us, and didn't see any racism in it, what that shows us is that the criminal justice system is focused toward a certain group of people, and when they end up in the system without representation, the Kalief Browder case is what you unfortunately get.
Eugene, you're the party in power. You're a member of it. You can't escape it. What can be done at the federal level in order to ensure these? I see what the states are doing, but what can our legislature do?
Well, I think at the federal level, you can have, part of criminal justice reform, a lot of times we talk about policing reform, a lot of times we talk about sentencing reform, but a big part of that needs to be pretrial detention reform. Dealing with cash bail, dealing with bond bail, dealing with the rules on letting folks go on their own reconnaissance. I think there are some things that can be done on the Capitol Hill side. There are even more things to be done in the state, within our state assemblies. But I think we need to keep, the idea of reforming pretrial detention and in what circumstances that we actually send somebody to jail to be held before their trial, and then make sure if we're going to hold them that they have a hard trial date. That's part of the situation, the Kalief Browder situation. That he didn't have a hard trial date. But I agree with the raise the age bill. I don't think anyone under the age of 18 should be charged as an adult. I mean, you're a child, you're an adult, you're an adult.
But if we're not pursuing prevention, we're going to have this. I mean, the idea that we talk so much about the pretrial situation, these kids shouldn't even be in the system in the first place. And once they get into the system and their lives are touched by that and they get a felony on their record, it impacts them for the rest of their life. And until we address that, we sort of have this assumption. I have a family full of cops from New York, but we have this assumption that cops need to be in our life all the time. Need to be, and that's part of the problem that we're even talking in that sense.
Right, but look, what about some justice for the 16 and 17-year-olds who have already been tried and have been serving sentences in adult facilities all these years? Is there anything, gentlemen who are joining us from New York, is there anything that can be done for the ones who are in the system? Calling all civil plaintiffs lawyers.
Well, one of the reasons why we have not agreed to any of the proposals is around sealing, which all of the lawyers in the room are obviously keenly aware of. And there's been a proposal on the table that these young people should have to wait 10 years before their records are sealed. We said that's ridiculous. And one thing, it should be less time, and also we've been pushing for retroactive sealing. Let's give some justice for these young people. When you think about Kalief, and one of the points that was raised, it's not just what happens after the conviction on the front end. Kalief refused to agree to plead guilty, but on the front end, they wanted him to do $3,000 bail, and they couldn't afford that. So all these parts are intertwined at the same time, which is why we're not moving forward on this. Simultaneously, we've been very clear that we don't believe there should be tests as part of if a case should go to criminal court or to family court. If you're under 18, it should go to family court, and we should be finding ways to make it easy for that to be the case in the first place. And lastly, as we're thinking about how to make all these adjustments and how to do things more fairly, let's make sure we're adjusting everything at the same time. As was just raised, speedy trial is another component. A lot of times when someone is saying, well, we're not ready for the case, and it's delaying the case and it's stopping the clock, we're saying we need to reject those kind of measures. It should be easier to have a resolution rather than taking longer. And that's why today's such a critical day here in Albany. This will be the day on if we'll vote on the extender and if it will give us more time to raise the age right. And we need people to stand with us and stand with Speaker Hastings in the Assembly so that we do this correctly.
Well, we're standing with you, and we're hoping and praying for good results. Mr. Blake, Mr. Pinto, thank you for joining us.
A peaceful protest turned deadly. 37-year-old black man was shot and killed by Baton Rouge police. His hands are in the air, and you still get shot by the cops.
Oh my God, please don't tell me he's dead.
We're not going to let hate define us.
Race is a big part of this.
If truly all lives matter, then all lives need to matter equally.
What we require is action. What we require is accountability. We understand that black lives do matter, and we will keep focused on this issue.
NewsOne Now, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.